you for accepting to be on.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for the
we
invite.
Appreciate it for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to show off my coffee mug with the J.
It's a beautiful mug.
Too.
Yes.
Yes. I was wondering if you were going to have yours.
No, usually I do, but today I have this instead because it's so hot here. It's so hot, and usually I'm a big hot beverage person. It's very comforting for me, and even when it was summer, I didn't care.
Yep.
I would have it really, really hot.
Hot coffee. Yep.
Yeah. But I don't know what's happening. Like this year, I'm like, can I survive in this heat the rest of my life? Like I'm questioning it now. So what I'm going to do, if you all don't mind, for everyone listening, I would like to maybe give you guys a little bit of time to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself, like where are you from, where were you born and raised, things like that. And then I have some questions because I find the decision that you have made, which we'll get into soon, so exciting and so interesting. But first, I want to let listeners, know a little bit about your background before this huge change in your life happened.
I'll go first? Okay, so we are originally from Washington, D.C., and we now live in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. We do run a YouTube channel podcast. We're Chris and Jacki from the 7997 podcast. So I'm Chris. This is my lovely wife, Jacki.
Hello.
With a beautiful smile.
Oh,
I know, beautiful everything.
Yeah.
I'm lucky for sure.
She is.
So we grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, went to culinary school in Baltimore where we met. So we both have a background in culinary arts. We both were chefs and worked in the restaurant industry for 15 plus years. We had 2 sons together. Our oldest, Xavier, lives in New York City. He's married now. Our youngest is 21. He's out of the house as well, so we are empty nesters.
He's a cook.
Praise the Lord for that.
Yep.
I know for those who have kids, you're always praying for the day they get out the house, and once they finally do,
It's a praying for
Jacki's like, listen, you're on your own on this one.
I got my babies like that.
Right?
I'm sure you're enjoying the benefits of it.
I ain't played with them to leave. Oh my God, it's so rude.
My prayer was for them to grow up, be strong, be able to handle themselves independently, and that equates to leaving my house.
Well,
that's so different.
You give your own bio intro.
So yeah, we lived in D.C. for a while, had kids in Baltimore, then eventually moved down to Charlotte, North Carolina. We were there for almost 20 years. We basically raised our boys there. We were living in Baltimore before that, and we had to get out of Baltimore because if you've ever been to Baltimore, you know why we had to get out of Baltimore.
It's challenged.
It's a rough city. It's the educational system has failed a whole lot of people there, and we didn't want that system to fail our children, so we moved down to North Carolina where the educational system is much better and had a better chance of, being productive members of society once they actually grow up. So that kind of leads us into, I guess, kind of our decision to leave, right?
Yeah, I'm like, because again, like if you guys were paying attention to what Chris was saying, you guys moved to San Miguel de Allende, and I don't feel like this. You haven't been there very, very long, but this also has, like, it's been a little bit, right?
It's going on about 2 years now that we've been down to Mexico.
Okay, so quite recent, really.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, that was going to be like my next question, like, how do you just decide not just to move to a different city like you guys did a couple of times, but you're like leaving the country and then first of all, how do you decide you're going to move? You're going to leave the country. And then when does the idea of like, we're going to go to Mexico and we're going to go to this place, how does that happen?
Well, it was based off of my experience of actually traveling. One trip was to Ireland about 25 years ago for college, like a little intern, what was it, like a study abroad program. Just learning about their infrastructure in their country and how the systems are set up, browsing, going to, we were in Dublin specifically at Trinity College, and we were on a tour as the college students, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome, it's so beautiful here, and we were just whispering amongst ourselves, we bet that their tuition is, super high, super expensive, and the little Irish man walks on, he's like, oh no, it's covered in our taxes. We pay for it in our taxes. And I'm like, what in the world's Texas? I had to get through the accent. I sound like a pirate. My accents are wild.
Your accent always goes into Jamaican, no matter which is
pirate. It's so weird. But he was telling us that, yeah, we don't pay for school like you guys do, you Americans.
I know, you Americans.
You Americans. It's covered in their taxes, right? And so that was something that planted a seed in me that there was something different going on in some other place. It really opened my eyes. Fast forward for a 40th birthday trip, I actually went to South Africa. Oh my goodness, like really, world? You know, and we were in the throes of the Trump situation and how just life just started to become harder and harder and it seemed like we were going backwards, you know, racially speaking for the States. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. Being around it, being in another country, being in a country and a continent that gets downplayed, just like Mexico. It's like anything brown, there's something's wrong with it, right? You know, you get there and it's like,
it's beautiful. You know what? I'm so glad that you kind of brought that up because people that are like from South Africa, just other like quote unquote, brown countries, third world countries, they always go on videos or social media to say, like, I don't know why you guys think we don't have the things you have, or like that it's not, or that it's not beautiful here, or you know what I mean? Like they always showcase it as something very negative, not appealing, and like why in the world would you want to go there? So
why would you go, right?
and that was going to be my next question. Like, how did you feel about like, wow, people are lying? This is a beautiful, great place to be in.
Exactly. Not only was it a beautiful place to be in, and it's crazy because it's just so many layers. And I don't know how long we are scheduled to be here, but you know, the whole third world country piece, who qualifies that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
who deems it that? Yeah.
Who deems it, you know, third world? What are the qualifications and the standards, right?
And if you're in Mississippi and go down the wrong road, it looks like third world, right?
Yeah, and people
An entire country is made up of all different kinds of places. There's big cities, there's small towns, there's places that have been forgotten and full of poverty. Like
Flint, Michigan.
Right. You could say Flint, Michigan
is
no clean water.
Like, so is that third world living? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could have that argument, right? But just being able to see other parts of the world, be able to meet other people, specifically going to a country that's dominated by brown people, it was just so refreshing to be around so many brown people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then in Africa specifically, like, oh my God, you look just like Maurice. You look just like me. It's like, oh my God, like we're famous. Like you like we're
like
really
relatable in so many ways, right? Yeah.
It was really interesting. So that really is the why we even considered moving to another country, because we could have chosen another city the same way we decided, okay, Baltimore is not for us. Where are we going to go so that our family can flourish and thrive? So there are other cities I know in America where it's safer, where quality of life is higher, you know, but America just as a whole, the leadership is going to pot. You know, our neighbors are fighting and encouraging the infighting. You know what I mean? They're voting people in that's
a lot of divisiveness.
So divisive, right?
Yeah.
And then healthcare and the quality of the mental health. It's just, and as Black people, Black Americans, who, like Angela Ross says, you know, we built this joint for free. We're the most unsafe. You know what I mean? Brown and indigenous people are the most unsafe there. And we're the ones that gave it all for that country to be, you know, standing. But we're the ones that reap the least, you know? So
and I think there's a through line between both of those moves, like from Baltimore to North Carolina and then from North Carolina to Mexico. There is a sense of impending danger around you in some way. In Baltimore, it's very real violence, a lot of gang violence there, and also the danger of a lack of education for your children is also impending danger. But then when you got to North Carolina and the political environment started changing, And the way that violence was happening in this country, it wasn't isolated to areas.
Right.
It was random in a grocery store. It was random at a concert. Like,
Church,
you never know where you're safe.
Bank, doctor.
So,
you don't know.
you know, you want to get out of an environment where you're not sure where safety is.
Right, because your stress levels are, I mean, as it is already as a brown person in America, you're always kind of, it's in the back of your head. But then what you were saying, yeah, there's a level of comfort when you're like, okay, I already know that this area is semi-safe for me. I can be okay here for the most part. But when it starts to just happen randomly, now your sense of safety is like all over the place. So stress is like
discombobulated.
Yeah.
Discombobulated. But and also, you know, to just really call it out, they don't care.
Yeah.
And by they, I mean the people in power, right? So the people that we are voting in, they don't care.
Right.
And I'm old enough, I think all three of us are old enough to remember, like Columbine. We were in high school. So those were our peers being gunned down. And I never looked at them as those are white kids or anything like that. But then a few years later, you have Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
And then when you're able to look at the zip code, very non-brown community, non-brown states. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And all these beautiful white babies who are murdered.
Yeah.
And no change. That's when it clicked to me.
Right.
It really isn't about black or white. It's about money and power.
Yeah.
And so they just don't care.
They don't care about anybody.
They don't care. So now, you know, because, you know, when you grow up in, you know, black in America and all that, you know, and you have a history. Like my mom she was actually jailed as a teenager for not giving her seat up on a bus to a white person in Memphis, Tennessee, back in the 60s. So when you have that kind of history, right, it's like, oh, it's a black or white thing. But then you start to grow up and it's like, wait a minute.
There's more to this.
Yeah, like
They don't care about anybody at all.
You ain't gonna go help them either. Well,
Right.
you ain't gonna help them. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, I'm out.
Yeah.
I just don't have to subjugate myself. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
I did.
You got your SAT word in there? Okay.
If I have an option, I don't have to sit and just basically take this. And that's really where America has put a lot of people. There's a mass exodus, period.
Yeah.
And I think as an American, you kind of know too much about this country. So there's probably just as much to be afraid of in any other country if you know enough about it. But if you come in with ignorance sometimes, you just don't know where the threat is, right? Where the danger is. So sometimes you're not even aware until you get there, and then you learn a little bit more about the country. You learn like where you should go or shouldn't go.
Yeah.
But in America, you know that there's no safe place, right? So if I go someplace else, I may not realize there's no safe place yet. Like, let me live in ignorance sometimes, and ignorance is bliss.
Let me just enjoy this for a little bit.
Right.
Blinders on.
Yeah, and you know, it's I really like that you guys are talking about this because yes, there is that layer of course, like racism that so many people are still very trying to ignore it and like push it back, but it's very much there. But I do think I agree with you. The bigger problem is the power, the money, the power, because they thrive on this idea of like, you people down there continue fighting versus black and white. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because that's to our benefit. And in the end, they don't care about even the white folk at the bottom. So, like, it really is power, money, and then the rest just trickles down and it turns into, like, the chaos that we are experiencing right now.
Correct.
So those are the reasons you're like, we can't do this anymore. We kind of want to step out of this. We're going backwards. And then you choose San Miguel de Allende.
See?
Yeah.
Why? What did you know people or?
Yeah, like San Miguel wasn't the first choice.
Okay.
We looked at a couple places. We were looking at Rwanda. We were looking at Tanzania.
Going back home.
Some place in Africa.
Right.
We were looking at, Mexico for sure. But we didn't necessarily know exactly where we wanted to go. But we knew we just wanted to get out of the country for sure.
Okay.
And let's be clear though, Mexico still had a stigma.
Yeah, I mean Mexico had a stigma, but
been
Mexico was also close, right?
Yeah.
It's going to Rwanda as opposed to going to Mexico when, we have grown kids, so we know grandkids are going to come at some time. We lost a lot of family over the last year. So, you're going to have to travel back and forth into the country. You don't get to just leave and never come back.
Right.
So that trip from Africa to America is a lot longer than trying to get from Mexico back home.
Yeah.
Right.
So as a first stop, like Mexico felt like, okay, it's an easier place to go.
But the name was dropped because of your mother.
Yeah, and I talked to my mother, and my mother was living in Detroit at the time. She's a lot older, bad knees, and like the cold in Detroit is terrible.
Yeah.
And she's like, I want to get out of Detroit and go someplace warm. And her and my stepdad were looking at Puerto Rico, but she also dropped the name of San Miguel de Allende, which I had never heard of in my life.
I know.
And once you Google and YouTube it, it's like, oh my God, like it's a fairy tale. It just doesn't make sense that this kind of place exists.
Right,
Number
it's
one,
beautiful.
on this continent, like it feels like it's someplace in Europe to some extent.
Uh-huh.
But like you start looking into Mexico and you're realizing like all this indoctrination that you've been given is wrong.
Yeah.
And there are places like this that people with money know about, but us regular folks didn't even know existed,
Rewind to the trip to Africa. It's like, well, if it's so bad here, why are you here?
Right. Why are you taking the safaris over here? Why are you coming as your destination for family vacation?
Hello?
It's
Why
the
are you
people
here?
with money.
Oh my goodness! So
Yeah.
it's the hidden, like y'all are just lying to us, and just lying about the lies.
I
the
know.
lies,
And you
the
know what?
lies,
It's like the privilege of having money and in most cases
Knowledge
being
and
white.
power, right?
Yeah. And saying, oh, I choose to go here and this is a privilege and this is luxurious because I, a person with money, can come here and enjoy. But again, if I just
who's from there is no good,
Right.
You're like it's so
Exactly.
weird,
Exactly.
Right? But I wanted to also just piece that together with what Chris was saying too. Coming here, that it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. Guess who was here vacationing for Christmas?
Who?
Bill Clinton.
What? And you're like, it must not be that bad.
San Miguel de Allende. It can't be
Bill
that bad.
and Hillary Clinton
We're there.
We're here hanging out, vacationing, and they're not the first celebrities that we've seen here in San Miguel. You know what I
Really?
mean? So it's like, what really is going on here, guys?
Right. You don't want the
know
rest
what
of
I'm
us to know.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's like there's just so much out there. Moving isn't for everybody, but I think everyone should at least be educated on their options. You may not be able to move now, but maybe you can afford to get your passport.
Right.
You know what I mean? Maybe
Yeah.
you can start doing research on where you can go, where you can work from, or something, so that you can start taking those blinders off and start putting some truth to the lies.
Yeah.
To start dispelling those lies and maybe even understanding more of the facts.
Yeah, and I will say the lies go both directions. We're not the only YouTubers here in Mexico. There's plenty of people running around Mexico with their camera reporting from Mexico. And there's a narrative that Mexico is this perfect wonderland that you need to escape America to get to. And yes, there are things here that are better, but Mexico has its own issues.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And you get sort of one picture of it being all bad, and then you get another picture of it being all good. And the reality is, it's somewhere in the middle. It depends on where you are, where you live, who you're interacting with.
I mean, perfection isn't found anywhere.
Nope.
No,
You can't escape crime. You can't escape poverty. You can't escape a lot of things, right? Because it's going to be, or even evil politicians, because we've learned about that too. So there isn't necessarily a perfect system because it's being run by imperfect people. But I'm an advocate for a community. If they are advocating for family, food, and faith, and that's huge for Mexico. Family, food, and faith.
So I was born in Mexico. I was born in Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua. I didn't come to the States till I was 10, which is, I was already I had already,
friends.
Friends. I had started school there. My whole life at that point was in Mexico, it's funny because it's four of us. It's four girls. I'm the oldest. So myself and the one after me, we were both born in Mexico. And then we came to the States years later. The last two came along, right? And even though, they're from Mexican parents, they consider themselves Mexican, I've always said their experience is so much different than my experience here in the United States. The way they view the United States is different because I still have very vivid memories and memories that I treasure of Mexico, like the traditions. Christmas is just so different in Mexico than it is even here in El Paso. That's primarily a huge Mexican community, right? It's very, very different. And it is, this all to say that it's very community driven. It's very much about helping each other, faith, regardless of what you believe in, but everybody's kind of coming together and embracing that. But people fail to see that, or they are not allowed to see that because we're always looking at like the politics, which, like you said, imperfect people, right? Like the greed and hunger for power and all that. But if you focus on the community, it's
ground level, right?
Yeah.
Where the regular people live.
Yeah, exactly.
Food, family, and faith.
Yeah.
Because we're going to pass 10 churches. You know, there are going to be 10 festivals this month. You know.
There's something going all the time. You know, like I remember growing up in Juarez, and now Juarez, for a while after we left, got to be very violent. The violence was rampant there. You know, very, very sad. Yeah, very, very sad. But I remember growing up and like the ladies literally putting their chairs out talking, you know, while the kids played. It was very comfortable and very family friendly. And here, again, even though I'm in El Paso and it's technically like 30 minutes away from the border.
It's basically Mexico.
Yeah, basically an extension of Mexico. I can't do that with my kids. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel I can do that. So I'm always telling them, don't believe the hype about everything's bad in Mexico, right? Like, obviously you have to be cautious. You have to be alert. There's crime everywhere. But I can't wait to take them and have them experience that community because they've never had that here.
Yeah. It's a totally different environment. It's been refreshing and it's been a mental load off. You know what I mean? It's taken a mental load off of us. You know, and specifically for like the Black expats who are here, and then even more specific, the men. It's like, I'm not worried about getting shot here.
You know, that was going to be one of my questions because it is not something that I think everybody knows that the statistics, right, speak for themselves. Being Black in America, but specifically a Black man in America, are targeted all the time for the most minimal things, right? And I can't even imagine being a mother, you know, to a Black boy, a Black man in America. I'm sorry.
A Black mother, a Black sister, a Black wife of all these Black guys in your family is like,
I know.
Okay, that's not stressful.
Yeah. Like when you know they're good men, you know their heart, but then they go outside and they're viewed as something else, right? Like disassociating them from whatever good they are. And so my next question was going to be, because I also had interactions with Mexican police growing up. And there's good and bad, right? And mostly some tricky situations. But how has that been for you guys in Mexico? Like good or bad? Like just how is it different?
I think there is, number one, again, that unfamiliarity with racism in Mexico. But it isn't weaponized and systemized the way that it is in America. Like around here, ambulances, police cars always have their lights on. So when you first get here and you see a cop car with the light on, you're almost like, okay, what did I do?
Like PTSD, right? Kicking in trauma.
PTSD, right? You're thinking, okay, did I do something? And you find out, no, that's just how they roll around town. Like this is what they do. So after a while, you start realizing that you're not under this microscope anymore. They're not out here looking for you. They more than likely don't care who you are, what you're doing, because you're not doing anything wrong.
Right.
And then there's also sort of the white community that comes down to Mexico as well that may bring their, you know, racist tendencies with them. And they have a desire to want to weaponize the police the same way they do back home, but they don't have that power to here.
Right.
Yeah.
There isn't that same relationship where I can pick up the phone and call and say a Black man's doing something and the cops show up and you end up in jail.
I
you
know.
end up dead. So they don't have that power here either. So it becomes a lot more freeing. It's a lot more lightweight here because there just isn't that baggage that you have in the U.S. of all these negative interactions with the police.
Yeah.
Now, if you ask local Mexicans about their interaction with the police, they'll say, don't trust the police ever.
Right.
But I think that tends to be more about shaking down your pockets rather than leaving your debt in the street.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different dynamic to think about. Like, I would much rather them want to get the money out of my pocket than to take the life out of my body.
Yeah, because it's like an equal opportunity there. It's like anybody that they can get money from, you know what I mean? So it's not about race specifically. And you're right, there is like even colorism, because I'm out of all my sisters, I'm the darkest, right? Mm-hmm. And so I experienced a lot of colorism, even like in even family members that weren't trying to be mean. It was just so normalized, you know. But there was always that difference of like, oh, she's the dark one and she's the lighter one, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is a lot of that as well. One of the things that I wanted to ask is, let's say somebody listening right now is like, you know what, that sounds like fun. I'm kind of tired of the politics, the people, whatever, you name it, in the United States right now. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I've been looking at Mexico, right? But they don't know, how do I start? Because a lot of people don't realize you need visas and you need things like that, right? Like, so what are some of the things that you had to learn along the way when it came to like, immigration or just the legalities of it all that you wish you had known beforehand?
The way that we did it, number one, I would tell anybody to go visit a couple of places first. We did not do that. We sold our house, we dropped everything, cleared out the house, and
said,
just
peace out.
Like, never been to Mexico before. We just said, hey, we're going to go and we're going to make sure that it works. Like, there's no running back home. So if you feel so compelled to do that way, have at it.
By all means.
I would say go visit some places first and figure out where you might want to. You might want to be on the beach. You might want to be in the mountains. You might want to be in a big city, small city. Like, Mexico has as much variety as any other country on the face of the planet. Mm-hmm. So you probably want to travel around and get a chance to see the whole country a little bit. As far as the process, what made it easy for us, and I don't really have any regrets of the process, is that we used a facilitator. So there's a tool called the Mexican Relocation Guide. We paid, I think, $300. It gives you access to all this information that helps you not only through the visa process, but once you get down there, if you want to get a car, if you want to go get a rental, healthcare, lawyers, like your entire life in Mexico is in this guide. So it has all this information. So there's like nothing you're really missing except for maybe like super local information that you want to talk to people about. So the process really starts on the U.S. side. You have to go to a Mexican consulate, do all the paperwork, jump through all the hoops that they need there.
But that's really for residency, because like to visit here, you can
if you want to visit, you can come on a tourist visa.
Yeah, you literally, for Americans crossing the border, is very easy. Yeah. You just get on the plane and come on over, and then
because I think it's like 180 days or something like that, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So most major cities, like if you come to Mexico City, maybe even Querétaro or Monterrey, like depending on where you land, you will automatically get a stamp for 180 days. So 6 months is plenty if you wanted to come and visit, like you said.
And you may not always get that 180 days. So some people rely on that and say, hey, I'm going to come down and get 180 days, and I'll go do a border run, I'll run back to America, and I'll come back and get 180. And it's not a guarantee. Sometimes they'll stamp it wrong. Sometimes they'll look at your thing and say, we're giving you 2 weeks, you got to be back.
Get out of
here. So like that's something, if you decide to stay in Mexico for long term, don't rely on doing border runs to get 180 days every time, because there's no guarantee that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
If you're looking at residency, whether temporary or permanent, you have to start the process in America at a Mexican consulate. The thing about that, every single consulate is different. They have different requirements for income. They have different requirements for paperwork. Some are nice, some are not nice. Some will have appointments open. Some may be booked up for 6 months. Some won't let you go across state lines. So like if we're in North Carolina, they won't let us go down to the Texas one, depending on the Texas consulate it is. So it's really very specific. So you really need to kind of
maybe start there first.
Get the requirements from that consulate. Don't rely on what's online, because it's all wrong. Most of the time.
It's just area specific. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I know this year, I think all the income requirements across the board, every consulate went up. And that just depends on who's in power. I think once the latest president gets enlisted, she'll probably change everybody that's at all the consulates. All the turnover employees will get brand new employees, and they'll all have new standards. really up to the minute and up to the moment of like when you get there, what you're going to need. Make sure you kind of talk to them beforehand if you can.
And they also could have loopholes because
Yeah.
there are some people who may have overstayed their visa date, right? And then there'll be a program, like an amnesty kind of a program.
Okay.
That will allow you to become a resident, temporary,
Right.
or so.
So there's sort of this weird dichotomy that's happening right now where if you go through the visa process the normal, correct way, it's a lot more expensive. The government has a program now where if you have been in the country since, I think, 2021, and if you overstayed a visa at some point, they'll allow you to get temporary residency visa without any of the requirements.
Oh, okay.
I don't understand why they would want to do that.
Because we paid full price, that's why.
Right. Like,
We did everything by the books, okay?
I'm sure there's some motivation behind it, but I have no idea what it is. Why would you want to make it easier on a particular group of people that have overstayed a visa, basically broken the law?
Yeah.
And make it easier on them versus people that want to come in, you're making
And
it more
get it
difficult.
as right as possible. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. But it's one of those things, if you can take advantage of it, take advantage of it.
Yeah.
It may even behoove you if you come visit to stay over your visa for like a day. Just to have that in the bank to say, hey, if some point I decide that program is still valid, I can actually use that to my benefit. So once you go through the consulate process on the U.S. side, they end up stamping your passport. So you have, what is it called? A canje they put inside your passport, which is sort of the sign to customs agents that you're coming into the country to finish off your residency process. I forget exactly how long the canje is good for, but once you enter the country, you have within 30 days to finish off the process.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm already here.
You're
I
here for
gotta
this
get it
purpose,
done.
you gotta get
You need
taken
to
care
get it done, yeah.
Yeah.
No overstaying your contact.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's really where the facilitator comes in. The facilitator really helps you on the Mexican side. They don't help so much on the U.S. side. But depending, again, on which consulate you go to in Mexico, laws are different, rules are different, requirements are different. So having that facilitator is really important because
Super
they
helpful.
know the local rules and regulations and requirements.
And the language.
And the language,
Yeah.
and they have connections that, can get you past things that maybe you couldn't get past in other ways.
Yeah.
So really, they're basically a hookup for you. That, to me, was sort of the biggest thing because we came in through La Paz, and that's where we got our particular residencies. Because on Baja California Sur, the laws are a little bit more eased. They're a little bit more gringo friendly at the end of the day, and
The process was quicker too.
process was a lot quicker.
Like the consulate,
even just to get an appointment was much easier.
And plus, like places that are like San Miguel de Allende is just so popular. So the consulate appointments, they're weeks and weeks, sometimes months out. So going to another consulate was just quicker for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our facilitator was a former lawyer. She kind of knows everybody in, all of the departments. So when it came down to, okay, we need to get this done in a week or two, because basically that was our vacation / get residency, because La Paz has some of the most beautiful beaches on earth, right? So it was a place where we got to go in sort of the off season. It wasn't super duper hot. We got to stay and relax a little bit, got to see a little bit of the country, got to go down the boardwalk and get seafood. And at the same time, our facilitator is working on our benefit. So paperwork is good.
Yeah.
So all we had to do was just sign paperwork, pay her
Show
whatever
up
she needed
for
to be paid, give her the documents we
fingerprints.
needed, and she took care of everything else.
Yeah.
So for us, it was like super helpful.
That was worth it then.
It was worth whatever you pay for. Like it's not.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like deathly expensive either, but so you'll hear some facilities want to charge you $10,000 or $15,000 or something crazy like that. I don't think we paid maybe $1,000 at the most. It wasn't very much.
Like altogether.
Altogether, including the money for the card and the residency and all the paperwork itself.
Okay.
To me, even I hear locals within the, they use a facilitator as well, just because the government is so difficult sometimes to get through the processes.
The red tape.
So, I wish I had that in the U.S. sometimes, be able to go to somebody and say, hey, go do this governmental process thing. Because I don't
My
wanna do it.
direct, yeah.
Yeah. You don't sit in that DMV line for me, please.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now that you've been there for a little over a year, how much different has your lifestyle or just like your daily activities in and out has changed now that you are expats living in Mexico?
Well, I would say we are immigrants we're living in Mexico. There seems to be a negative connotation to me of expats of like we're different than immigrants. And like if you're from Mexico coming into America, no one ever calls you an expat. They call you an immigrant.
And I was wondering about that because I'm like, I'm like, It's kind of the same thing, but I just figured it's something that maybe people like to be called. So I'm like, well, sure, it doesn't hurt me. I'll call you that.
Yeah.
But it's yeah. But I guess it is the same thing.
We are total immigrants. Let's be clear.
So I'd say definitely some lifestyle changes. We moved from, what was it, a 3,000 square foot house we had in North Carolina. It was a big historical house built in 1920. It was supposed to be the house we were going to die in. You know, that was going to be our last house. And then we're living in probably a townhouse size, maybe 1,500 square feet. Mm-hmm. Life obviously is a whole lot more, to me, I say lightweight here. We don't have a car. You know, rent is $800 rather than paying $3,000 for the 3,000 square foot house we had.
Yeah.
It just, there's a lightness that you have here when your cost of living actually feels lighter than your quality of living. So you feel like you have a really good quality of life, but you're not like slaving and fighting for it every day.
Right.
You really feel like you're in a place where even if something goes wrong, like I've had, you know, my pay got cut at some point when I moved down here because, you know, now geographically you're in a place where you're supposed to like make less money.
And you don't need more.
You don't need more. It's like, you know, before I left, they said, oh, we're not going to cut your pay. And when you get down here, oh, we'll cut your pay. So even with things that are happening here, we're having, you know, my father passed, my mother-in-law passed, my brother-in-law passed. We had a couple of aunts pass as well. So we're flying back and forth to the U.S. and having, you know, financial issues. But even with all that, it doesn't feel as heavy as it would if we were back with a $3,000 mortgage and $200 electric bill and car insurance and car note on top of all of us. Like, it becomes a lot easier for you to recover when things go wrong in life.
Yeah.
$10 electric bill.
Right. Like, I can scrounge together $10 from anywhere.
We can find 200 pesos.
Right.
I could open my front gate and put out a sign and sell food out the house if I had to make
Slip some plates. We can make a couple of pesos, right?
Yeah.
Right. Which, by the way, I'm sorry that you had, experienced so much loss recently. But if you had been here, for so many of us, a loss, you can't properly even grieve sometimes, right? Like, because first of all, if you're out of, you're not in the same state, now you're having to figure out, can I fly? Who's going to fly? Right? Like,
PTO, do I have enough grievance leave? I mean, it's just a succession of things that you're just constantly checking off. Like, can I, right?
And then it's like, I got to get right back to my life because now I got to keep paying bills and I got to keep, in order to maintain something that feels like I'm doing something with my life, right? Yep. And that's something my husband and I talk about so much because he's now retired military. And so he's in. Oh, thank you. I'll let him know. You said that.
No, you were serving with him too, ma'am.
Everybody serves together. It's so, I never know what to say when they say that to me. I don't know how to take it, but then I'm like, you know what? I was home with 5 kids for many times. Yes. So yes, I did in my own way. I did. And let me tell you, when that
lines are no joke.
5 kids was, it was a little tough sometimes, but we managed, thankfully. Tell me, how has your experience been with like the people, the community? I mean, I know we already said there's like a little bit of something, crime never goes away. There's still racism, like you guys said. But for the most part, what has your overall experience been with your community right now? I'm
more in the community than Chris is. Chris is a homebody. But
you and my husband would get along. Yeah.
Oh my Lord. You're like, hey, you don't go out this week. Hey. The community is, to me, it's been interesting. Because there's subsets of community, right? Mm-hmm. So you have your expat immigrant community, and then you of course have the local community. And there's various cultures, so in our neighborhood, there are 3 couples like us, including us, right? So there are 2 other young black couples. Is it okay if I call us young?
We'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, ignore the gray in my beard. But we're actually middle-aged. Oh, my God. So anyway, so there's 3 middle-aged black couples here. And 2 doors down is a young couple. She is Afro Cuban, and her husband is Mexican, who's from San Miguel, right? And then of course you have the local Mexican community. But it's been interesting because we talked about this in one of our podcasts. Because San Miguel is a tourist town, I think that they sort of kind of hold back on their friendliness a little bit. This is my experience. Until they get a chance to see you more than once. There's so much turnover, unless you're just a naturally happy, bubbly person, then that's fine, right? But for the most part, they're very nice, but they're not overtly, just
like cordial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but over the past few months that we've been here, we're frequenting the same spaces, there's a really delicious Lebanese restaurant here, right? We'll go in and they're like, Jackie, Chris, is like, you're not visiting anymore. Like, you really live here. So there are a couple of spaces that are that way, where we are recognized and called by name. And it's really cool. Maybe a local bakery knows us by name too.
Maybe.
All the bakeries. There's literally one on every other corner.
We didn't know.
That's more fabulous. So.
Yo, we didn't know Mexico was so bakery heavy. Okay?
They are. I mean, I'm telling you, cafecito and pan dulce are life.
What?
Life.
It's really funny. And it tickles me because that there are folks who are here just snowbirding, right? Just for a little time. And then the locals will know, I've observed this, like, hola, Jackie, hi, buenos dias, ¿cómo estás? And then another, visitor, I'm not going to tell you all about that, but anyway, it's a visitor, and they're looking like, what you doing here? How long you gonna be here? You don't look old enough to be retired. When are you leaving? They have all these little questions. So it's interesting. Just the mix is interesting because we are able to see visitors come and go, right? We're able to observe the different immigrant communities. We're able to see the locals. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a transitional town for a lot of people. So there is a San Miguel community that's raised and grown here. But there's so many people from other places that come here as well that, hey, I'm from Mexico City, I'm from Guadalajara, from Puebla. Like, I just don't want to be in a big town anymore. I want to be in this place, and it felt good to them.
Well, you know what, though? I've met a lot, specifically young men, and I'm going to assume it's the cartel who have moved here, from other cities. I'm not necessarily going to name drop the cities.
Yeah.
But they will name drop the city and they'll say, yo, I moved here because the cartel was so bad. Yeah,
it's like
domestic moving
Yeah.
for safety reasons. And then it's also a really popular spot for domestic tourism.
That's what I hear because like I was saying earlier before, for anyone listening, we had technical difficulties and we were kind of cut out for a while, but it was me all along, you guys. It was me all along. But before we got cut off or my mic decided to go rogue on me, I was telling you that I have a friend, Canadian, and she moved to Querétaro, but she moved there because her fiance, I believe, is from there, or was at least, he's Mexican from Mexico, and I believe for work reasons. I don't know. I've never asked her that much, but the point is they settled.
There's a lot of corporations. They do a lot of business with American companies too.
I'm assuming because I think he holds like a corporate position, but she's been living there and she loves it, and it's been interesting to also kind of personally hear her experience as a close friend who is like, I love where I am. There is an easiness to living here, right? And then she's Canadian. For the most part, they're also very laid back, right? So she kind of embraced this lifestyle. For her was like perfect. Yeah, perfect. But it's also very interesting how we can relate on things like being immigrants, right? Because she'll tell me, I'm learning the language. I still have to speak very slow. I'll go somewhere and it's so frustrating that I can't express myself correctly. And then they're always trying to be very courteous and like help me out, but then I can't get it. And she'll kind of like vent to me and be like, I'm so frustrated, da 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 da. And it's like, I can identify with that, coming to this country, being so little and just thrown into a classroom where I had no clue. Like, I didn't even have an ESL teacher, nothing. I was just like, and I had to learn it, right? Because I had to survive. I had to survive. So it's funny how we relate on those things, right? And she kind of tells me some of the challenges she faces. So I'm curious to know, I'm assuming language barrier, one being one of them, but what other challenges have been like really difficult, and how did you overcome them, or how are you trying to overcome them still?
To me, I think the language is sort of the center of so many conflicts, of so many things that you normally don't think about. So recently we had, rain coming through. It's the rainy season. The power goes out, and normally you can, pick up the phone, you call the electric company. I don't have that option. I don't know enough Spanish to talk about the electric company. I can order food in the restaurant, but to say, hey, I have no power, can you come out? What's going on? I don't have that, capability. So a lot of that challenge just comes from the things that you want to do in everyday life that you can't necessarily communicate easily about. And you have to kind of pull out your phone and use Google Translate, and sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Sometimes they have no idea what you're saying, even though it's translated, because
it may translate something wrong.
Right, it may translate something wrong.
Yeah, because there's also like depending on geography, right? Because some Spanish is like specific to certain countries, and Google just mashes it all together.
And like Google Translate doesn't know how to meet the level of the person. It may be speaking in Spanish and using words that they don't even know, even though they may speak Spanish. Like, their level of education may not be at the same level as Google's. Like, you have people doing the same thing in the U.S. and they translate it and they'll use words that you've never heard before, even though you're a native English speaker. So like some of that is sort of a challenge. And then also the challenge of, I think, the way business is done here is a little different. I think I found a lot of workarounds to be able to pay bills online, but there's still some that like, okay, you got to go down to the OXXO and pay somebody, or you got to go down to the office and pay them in person. It's a very cash-driven society. So it used to be able to just swipe your card everywhere in the U.S. And here you don't always have that option. Even if you're at a farmer's market in the U.S., they'll pull out their phone. They have a little thing they can plug in.
Their little square.
Right. But here, like, you rarely find anybody with a square. They're going to want cash. So realizing that it's a cash-based society has been a challenge as well, to make sure that you always have some cash in your pocket. You already have change to be able to pay a taxi driver. You have change to be able to get into a bathroom, because the bathrooms aren't always free. You got to put a couple pesos in there as
6
well.
pesos for a water closet.
So it's just a different way to kind of have to think about how you move through daily life and what do you need to have as essentials.
And even tipping when you're at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Because the plastic bags are not readily available, right, when you're going grocery shopping. So even the big box stores, the La Comas and the city markets and places, Sorianas, they don't have plastic bags. So you either want to pay or you're going to, bring your own. But
your own bag.
Yeah, their own bags. But we also tip. There's always a bagger at the end of each cash register. So just having that wherewithal that this is excuse the statement, I guess, is a hustle kind of environment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, and you know what I saw, first, that I immediately was like, there's something different here. When I came to the States, when I was growing up in Juarez, and I'm talking like I was young. There is a level of independence that children and young people and just people in general have in Mexico that you come to the States and you realize, wait a minute, why was I doing? Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Because I'm telling you, because like I would get back in the day, I don't know if they still have them, but rutas, which is like the small little buses, right? Like they used to have rutas and they're small like vans, like, but they served for transportation.
Correct.
I was like 6 years old. My youngest, well, my sister at the time, who's comes after me, she must have been like 4.5, 5 maybe. I knew how much money to pay, and I would take the ruta to go visit my grandma, and it was like a 25-minute ride. And we felt so able and so confident in the things we did, which I think to some degree it could be considered abuse. But, you know, like, it's just how everybody does life over there. Kids are very independent. They're very savvy. They pick things up so quick. And I do see, I hope my kids don't listen to this, but no, like, just how the privilege that they grew up with, right? Like, even my 19-year-old, I don't think could do some things that I was doing at maybe 10, 12, right? And I think what you said, the hustle-driven mentality, I think it has a lot to do with that.
That hustle, I mean, you're gonna tip the person who's bagging your groceries, and then you walk out 10 feet, and you're gonna tip the person who's helping you put the bags in the taxi. Like, taxi, you know, it's like, necesito taxi. I'm like, oh yes, now I gotta tip you. Oh my, you know what I mean? So like, there's a boy, you gonna pay, okay?
You open up their garage and there's a cafe in there, or, you know, they have a little corner store, and it's like,
or they knock on your door selling honey and pineapples. It's like, who's at the door, babe? Oh, you need this. I got some honey. What? You got honey. The honey man was walking down the street. They gonna ring your door like, yeah, honey, yeah. I'm like, what? But it's delicious. But
they say there's pesos out there, and I gotta go get them.
What?
That's
It's a situation. But this is the thing. There's a TV show. Is it on Netflix? The kids that's in Japan.
Yeah, the Japanese show on Netflix where kids in Japan, as part of their culture, at around like 3 or 4 years old, they run on their sort of their first errand by themselves. So really, the way they raise their kids is, you know, they're preparing them weeks and months ahead of time for this one errand that they're going to do. So they know how to get through the neighborhood. They know how to go to the store and buy the fish or the rice or whatever.
Or so, like in her case, how to get to grandma's house.
Right, how to get to grandma's house. So like literally in their culture, they're preparing kids at a very young age to be independent. Whereas in America, you know, we really don't do that. We're coddling them. We're, you know, making sure they're safe in their little pocket and space. And it's like, okay.
Picking them up everywhere they got to go.
Carrying them everywhere. And it's like,
we did the same thing. We got carpool kids for the most part. But it's interesting. They build in, and it's not independence to be independent of others. It's building an independence so that you can be strong.
Like contribute.
Exactly. Yes. Right. So we're going to strengthen you as much as we can so that when you know, are needed in the community, you're now strong enough to link up. And because it's very community driven over in Japan, you know, they have multi-generational
even in the classrooms, like they're teaching kids in the classroom after lunch, they go and they clean their own dishes, they clean the room. So like it's built in their culture that you are supposed to contribute.
Correct.
And
you are a part of something.
You are part of a larger group, right?
So I think we all go through that learning phase of getting our first job, and we do terrible at it because we haven't been taught to contribute. We're just sort of like, oh, you're supposed to pay me some money. No, you're actually supposed to work and do something for that money and actually be responsible and contribute. You have to learn that as an adult rather than learning that as a child, which is, you know, strange.
Right. So it's been interesting to observe, and I love how you shared that about your childhood. But the thing is, though, we are in control of that, right? So our children are limited, but some of the reason is because of what we didn't put into them.
Yep. It's us. It really is us.
It was me, Your Honor.
No, you know what? And I will take that too, because I think part of why I was so like not wanting to do that with my kids, because I'll be honest, it was me. My husband, he's from Micronesia, so he's Pacific Islander. He grew up in an island where, I mean, again, 9 years old.
Gorgeous. Oh my God. Oh my God.
No, like he says I was 10 years old and I was like with an axe, not even like a mechanical one. I'm like cutting down trees, right? Yep. And I'm building a canoe and I'm fishing to eat. And so again, he was very much independent because he had to. He was also a big family, and he was like, I got to do my part. But with me, I am grateful because I did, even surviving in the United States as an immigrant, I had in me that spirit of like, I don't know if you guys have heard it, but like, ponte las pilas, you gotta get with it and you're gonna figure it out, right? Like nobody's gonna come and save you type of attitude, right? Yeah, so it's like, ponte las pilas, get it together, learn it. I had to pick up English like within months, Jackie. Like months. In the moment, I didn't see it as a bad thing. I didn't see it as a stressor. It was a stressor because I'm like, I can't understand what the teacher is saying. I can't communicate with her, right? But it was motivation for me. And I remember the exact moment where, you know, I was in 6th grade and they're giving us a chapter book to read. It's all in English. And it was like a chapter book. It was no like, let me learn some. No, it was like a big, thick book. And we had to read it every day, right? At home for like 15, 20 minutes. I'm reading. And I kid you not, I have this moment where I'm looking at the words and I'm reading them in Spanish. Technically, I'm pronouncing it in Spanish.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I'm like, I don't know what it says. And I remember telling myself, exactly. But I remember,
web. You're gonna say Charlotte.
Right. I'm all Charlotte's Web, right? That's how I'm reading. But I remember telling myself, one day I'm going to read this whole book and I'm going to understand everything in it. And within 4 or 5 months, I was reading it, right? Yeah. But I think that served a purpose. In that sense, my family did set me up to have that fighting survival type of spirit in me, right? But then there were other extremes to that where I didn't really there was a lot of neglect, and I don't think it was like because they didn't love me. They just knew I was very capable, right? Yeah. And so the responsibility comes because she can handle it. Look at her. She did this and this and that, right? Right. Yeah. So I think when it came down to having my own kids, I was like, I don't want to put that much pressure on them. I want them to have a childhood. I want them to have, but I might have gone a bit
I think
overboard.
A lot of us in our, goal to try and protect our children from some of those hurdles that we had to go through, we're like handicapping them. Like we don't understand how much those hurdles actually did for us. And when you start keeping that away from your kids, you're actually not letting them grow and get stronger. And I think, we did the same thing with our youngest son, where it took him a long time to learn how to literally just work, like just how to learn how to be self-sufficient, how to be independent. And part of that is because we didn't really, instill that in him as much as we could have. So you always kind of look back and say, I'm trying to protect them from things. It's like some things they need to go through because it's going to make them stronger at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's hard, but it's like how you set him up. Yeah, it's true. So I wanted to ask you all something else. Now that you're in the living there and you're like, well, this is it. We sold everything back home. We have to make it work here. Yeah. What's like, that's so crazy to me, but not so much because that's what my mom did. My mom literally said, we're moving to the States, and we left. We had nothing. We just left. As a matter of fact, you guys, I crossed the river. Like my dad and my sister, we swam across the river. And then that's how we got to the States. Again, another one of those things where I don't think I could put my kids through that, but we had to do it. We had to do it. But anyway, but I want to know, like, do you guys have now is there like a favorite thing that even on really maybe frustrating days when you're like, I still can't figure this out, or I still can't understand this part of the culture, or, like you said, I can't pick up the phone and just freely start, yapping away and asking questions. Is there something about the change you've made that still says, no, you know what, this was still right for us?
I would say there's probably a couple things. Number one, looking at your bank account.
That's a motivator.
Knowing, how much isn't going to get hit from the next, bills that come through. I think also for me, just kind of getting out into the city. This city in particular is one that is gorgeous from head to toe. And I think, we kind of were handicapped a little bit for the first probably year or so because it's so hard to traverse the city sometimes. It's cobblestone everywhere, sidewalks are super narrow, all kinds of potholes, and like you're walking around and you have to stare at the ground so much because you don't want to trip and fall.
You don't want to die that day.
Right. After you kind of get used to walking in the city, You stop looking at the ground and you start looking up in places you've never looked up before. And you see something new all the time. As small as the city is, it is just jam-packed with so much new and exciting things and beautiful things. And there's constantly, like there's an Asian restaurant down the street that serves sushi, and then it switched over to be an Asian noodle restaurant. So like, there's always something new going on here. There's always celebrations and fiestas and the indigenous people coming through town. They have big parades, and there's just so much for you to kind of get engrossed in that we just missed out on in North Carolina. Like, it's just, there's not as much culture there. We were in Salisbury, North Carolina, so a suburb of Charlotte. So when it comes to culture, like, it wasn't a hotbed of cultural activity all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas here, like, you don't go through a month without there being a parade for some reason. And there's always something to do. There's always a new restaurant, and they are world-class restaurants, as well as the hole in the wall where grandmama is cooking the best birria tacos you've had.
Grandmama.
Abuela,
Thank
abuelita.
you, abuela.
So rude. But it's just, we're in a place that is small and compact, but always new and doesn't really get boring. So that just makes it so much more worth it to me. It's a very different lifestyle that creates new challenges and new opportunities for you every day if you're willing to go and take them on. And you didn't necessarily get that back home. Whereas, you know, someone who's not from America who goes to that same space may feel the same way we do here. But there's sort of this idea of like you're getting out of what you're used to and into something that's foreign and unknown and a new adventure at the end of the day. So to me, that's worth it. And it's something that I've missed out on I've missed out on my entire life because I am a homebody and I don't go venture out as much as possible. But being in a new country, you kind of have to get out and about. If I want to go get some eggs, I got to get out the house, walk around the corner, and go to the street. Unless I order a Rappi, which will bring it to your door. I love Rappi. If you,
there is definitely groceries ordered on a regular basis.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, just that sense of adventure being here, I think, makes a lot of the heartache that we went through to get here worth it. I do miss my big house back home. I do miss because we literally had the house for about a year. Got it perfectly,
to where you wanted it,
decorated the way we wanted to. Then we were like, hey, let's get out of here, let's sell it.
And you're all, wait, what?
Wasn't the plan, but I'll trade in that 3,000 square feet for this 1,500 square feet any day of the week now, because I know what's on the other side of the border, and the adventure that's there is worth much more than the designer couch I love to have in my living room. So
right, yeah. And for you, Jackie?
I would say the relief of the stress is definitely one. And the other answer I think that's competing with that are the people. And not anyone specifically, I guess, but the indigenous people. And that's something that those are two words I've actually been using more often. Not Mexicans, but the indigenous people. It's so refreshing, if you will, because in America the indigenous people were removed, and very rarely do you roll up on a Cherokee indigenous person or Blackfoot or all of those tribes. You don't normally see them, right? But then you cross the border and it's like, and you go to the festivals,
the Aztecs
celebrations
and Mayans and all over the place.
And you're just like, wait a minute, they're not Mexicans. They're not the others that,
right.
It's like, no.
They were here before Spain was
like,
here.
oh my God, these are the real deal. Yeah. And then you see the headdresses and all of the things at the celebrations, and it's like, this is really eye-opening to be able to see that piece of the culture and just to have that experience and understanding that they belong here. And that's something that America has they are very,
they don't necessarily embrace it as much because Native American people are there. Of course, the tribes are there. And you have to go into certain spaces.
Right. Yeah. You literally have to go there, right, to the Cherokee Nation and to the Iroquois, wherever those reservations are located. You have to go there. Who's getting on a plane to go to South Dakota? I'm not going, But here, this is their homeland. But I was going to say America has a doctorate degree in making other people feel like others.
And invisible,
in their own land,
right? Yeah. And it's like, no, these are the indigenous people who've been here for centuries and in eons, you know? So
Yeah.
it's that's to me my favorite. I'm a people person. I don't know if you can tell that.
So am I, Jackie.
But I just love that piece of it. The historical and to me, it doesn't matter what is in front of the word people or person, you know, you're a person, and just being able to experience that, and not look at them as others. I would love that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I heard a very small portion of an interview, and I can't think of the name of the lady right now, but she is from, I believe she said Jamaica. And she said, I don't know what it is about America, meaning the United States, that I never, ever, ever feel or am more aware of my blackness as I am here in America than back home or anywhere. Yeah, or anywhere else.
Know how to make you feel like a other.
Yeah. And that's what that's why I was reminded of that, what you were saying, because it is true. It is true. You kind of have to adapt to what makes certain groups of people comfortable here. You have to blend in, make yourself little, you know what I mean? Like, don't be too loud. If you want to go through life without trouble, right?
Assimilation. That assimilation piece, you know, because like even turn the century, if you were Irish or if you were Italian, you may have been white, but they still made you an other. So then you have to change your name and make it more Anglo, you know, just all kinds of things. America knows how to put you in a box, and it reminds me of how if you're ever filling out a job application, you know, they want to know what kind of other are you.
Yeah, that's so crazy because, like, for instance, my kids, they're half Mexican, half Micronesian, and it's like you still have to do an other so you can be more specific, and it's like, well, how much more specific can I get?
They just want to know how brown you are. They never want to know, are you people from Germany, Switzerland, or Ireland? They want to know what brown country do you classify yourself as being from. That's
true.
All.
It's true.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go down that road. But.
No. I talk about that quite a bit, and it's just who I am and what I look like. It's like I can't not talk about it. You know what I mean? Especially living here and in Texas. Texas is so crazy right now. But I think this is Texas, the part of Texas where I feel the safest because, you know, again, like the border, a lot of people look like me, talk like me, believe in the same things. We decided to homeschool too because no. It was a no for me. Yeah, so we homeschool, and I bring it up, and my husband before wouldn't say anything, but now he jokingly goes along with it. And I often say, we should go and stay in Mexico for a few months and just like get away from this and relax. And now he's like, yeah, you know, like I think he jokes, but the fact that he's going along with it now, maybe we'll be there.
You come back because this is where you're from. Do you still have family here?
I do. I have a lot of family in Juarez still. And then I believe I have family in Quintana Roo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I have family still there. And it's like my dad's like brother, so it's like immediate family. They just it was a lot of them, so I have a lot of family, but they're like immediate family. And I think about it, and so next month we have decided to start getting our passports again, like because my husband's expired, and so we have to get our passports. And I'm like, you know what, let's start venturing back out. I think, and I tell the kids all the time, you're gonna have authentic Mexican food, because even though you have pretty good Mexican food here,
I don't think El Paso would be pretty good.
It is pretty good, and it's as close as you can get to other parts of the country. But I was like, you cannot,
different.
it will be different and you will be hooked. And so I think the food is the way I'm getting at them with this whole situation.
Oh my Lord.
And I would say, even if you don't go to Mexico, like, just get out of the U.S. for a little while. I'm also thinking like Micronesia. I've never even, that's got to be gorgeous.
I had that pinned in my head. I'm Google searching it. I promise I'm Google searching it.
And you know, the people are so friendly. They're so smiley and they're just very peaceful. Very peaceful. And I think it has to do with their environment. Like you're living in paradise.
If you're mad living there, because it's in the Pacific Islands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you better not be mad.
Yeah, I know. If you're mad, you just have a bitter problem.
Lobsters and coconuts and
I'm telling you, my husband tells me of his childhood, and even though, like I said, it was hard because he had to do a lot of like physical work from a very young age. But he still listens to my stories from my childhood, and he's like, "Wow, that's wild, right?" And he tells me it was a really innocent, safe childhood he had because he was out climbing trees, swimming in the river, fishing with his friends. You know, he tells me I had a friend whose dad would take us with him out fishing on the boat. Yeah. And he thought it was hilarious and they enjoyed it that he would dive into the waves and they'd dive right with with the ship and the boat, and they'd come out laughing. And I'm just like, that's got to be the best experience, right? To be so connected to nature like that. So if you guys go visit, let me know and I'll have him like maybe give you some info or something that you need to go.
Please and thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for your patience because this was longer than expected only because we had that situation happen.
We run a podcast, so we understand.
You know.
Every time we try and record, something goes wrong. It's just the way it is.
Blinking like that.
I know. Why? Why is that looking like that? It happens so much. But I do want to, I'm so glad I had you all on. I had actually seen you through someone. We have a mutual friend on Facebook. Oh, okay. Stephanie. She goes by Steffi, I think. Stephanie. She makes the hats.
Oh, that's my mom.
I didn't know that was your mom.
Yeah.
Look at that. I had no clue because she's so kind and she's so talented. Like I see the stuff she does. She's now living in Mexico, right?
Yeah. We can walk to her house.
10 minutes from
I was just with her today. She does sewing classes on Fridays.
That's crazy. Well, yeah. We have that friend in common on Facebook, and she's always sharing like your YouTube, and so that's how I came across you guys.
She is our best marketer out there, I swear.
Mom going to share.
Yeah, Mom will take care of you for sure.
I had no clue that was your mom because she looks so young. Like I legit seriously, she looks good. So I'm gonna have to send her a message and say thank you for inadvertently connecting us. Yeah, but it was because I caught a few of your episodes, and Jackie, you seem like so much fun, right? Like you're just so bubbly, and I was like, I have to get them on. And then Chris, I love how Chris just like so very calm and like chill, that calm, energy,
cool, collected, whatever.
Yeah, he gives up. He just gives off that vibe, and I feel like you guys balance each other out in a really, really beautiful way. I can see how you guys like ended up together. I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for doing this with me. Just one last time for everybody listening, please, like, where can they find you? What projects do you have going on that you'd like for people to check out?
Wow, you can find us on YouTube at 7997 Podcast. We also are working on a future project called Dish or Dis, which we're actually going through every single restaurant in San Miguel and reviewing a food item on that.
Ooh, fun.
We are chefs and love food and want to showcase all the wonderful restaurants we have in San Miguel. What are the things you have?
Oh, well, if you're in San Miguel and you have a kitchen, a lot of people come in here and they'll have an Airbnb or something like that, and you're in the mood for a little taste of America. I actually have food products that I'm selling here. So as an immigrant,
Ooh.
sometimes you can't work in your white collar job that you had back home. So now I'm in
Yeah.
my blue collar job, going back to culinary arts, and I sell macaroni y siete quesos. So it's
Mm.
macaroni and seven cheeses, and it's packaged and all marketed and sold in stores here in San Miguel.
Can people
And
order? Like if anybody like myself here in the States wanted to order, could we order?
no, you can't. You need to come here locally.
We
Yeah,
will.
so if you're in San Miguel, it is
Okay.
available at Mercado Sano, Chinaberry Farms, and
Gil's
Gil's
Fruteria,
Fruteria.
and so take and bake product.
Okay.
And I also set up shop at for Chinaberry Farms, and every now and then I'm specialing gumbo because people just want a little taste of America.
Yeah.
So I'm a chef here and just have some little culinary delights. And I'm trying to think what else we have going on.
So many things. So many things.
But I think that's good enough.
That's good enough. Yeah. Those are the things that are actually going to happen sometime soon. We have long-term plans as well.
Yeah,
But
follow
if you're
them.
in San Miguel, come see us. Come visit.
Yeah,
We'll
go
see.
visit and follow them so you can keep up with whatever other projects they put out there.
Absolutely.
Please and thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.